do you let it? Okay.
Yeah, Shalini, I think we can see you from the main screen now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to talk about two projects that we did on exploring how to perform open vocabulary recognition with large-scale text-to-image foundational models. So we've had a long history of collecting very nice data sets in the computer vision community. For example, ImageNet for object recognition, the COCO data set for object detection, the Pascal VOC dataset for segmentation or semantic segmentation, and then also the Flickr 30K dataset for visual grounding with captions. However, there is one common theme in, all of these very nice data sets have led to incredible improvements in quality over the years and, really advanced computer vision and AI. However, what the one common theme among all these data sets is that in order to, curate them as well as to label them required a significant amount of human intervention and supervision. And these data sets were, very carefully collected, which was in itself a very laborious task. And, they were labeled, for example, for the object categories, or for the case of semantic segmentation, with very laborious hand-annotated segmentation labels. However, as we want to scale the ability of computer vision models to be able to recognize not just very small closed vocabularies of, let's say 100 or 1,000 categories, but something to the order of everything in the world, which is, for example, what humans can do. Then the question becomes, how do we, scale this annotation and data curation effort? This is just, it's a very large effort to be able to do for all categories that we encounter in the world. And so what is the path forward to going beyond these small closed vocabularies as a question? So when you look on the internet, there's a large amount of data on the internet with weaker labels, for example, captions associated with images. And I call them weaker labels because oftentimes the text description may be very different from what is described, what is in the image. It may describe, for example, the mood or something else entirely from what may be the content of the image. So in some sense, this is not a very strong form of captions, is not a very strong form of supervision, especially the captions acquired along with images in an automated manner by crawling the web. However, the advantage of this data is that there's a lot of it. So for example, the latest Lion dataset contains 2 billion image and text caption pairs. And, the same dataset has also been used, for example, to train the Ava Clip model, as well as the Stable Diffusion model for synthesizing images. So just by the sheer volume and diversity of data that's available on the internet, we can hope to be able to generalize to a lot more concepts in the world than just what we can encounter in small curated, data sets. So this is, so our work is centered around trying to use this data from the internet, a lot of it with a lot of diversity, but with much weaker text labels. And so there are two works that I'm going to describe in how we try to use this data to solve two specific problems for the task of segmentation. And we particularly considered segmentation because if you look at the hierarchy of annotations, segmentations are the most time-consuming and laborious annotations that humans have to sit and annotate. And so if we can perform this task in a more label and data efficient manner, then there's much to be gained in terms of efficiency, both in terms of cost and time. So the first work that I'm going to describe is a work that we published at CVPR 2022, and it's called Group VIT. And as the name describes, we found that semantic segmentation emerges simply by using these weaker text supervision caption labels. And I'm going to describe next as to what our findings were in this work and what our goal was. Right. So, this, circa 2022, the CLIP model just came out just before that, and the CLIP model is trained, has a vision backbone as well as a text backbone, where the two are trained with a contrastive loss. And researchers started to discover around this time, around late 2021, that when you train a text and image model, joint image text model, whether that be for the task of image captioning or, for example, the CLIP model with a contrastive loss, these models are pretty good zero-shot learners, and they can generalize to several downstream vision tasks simply by being trained with text supervision. So, for example, researchers found that you could use image captioning models to detect objects, and also the CLIP model showed quite good zero-shot recognition capabilities, where the goal was to recognize the central object of interest in the image. And it showed pretty good out-of-the-box zero-shot recognition capabilities, for example, on ImageNet. And even today, when you look at the ImageNet challenge, the top performing models for zero-shot recognition or even for linear probe-based recognition tend to be, for example, the AVA CLIP model, which is trained on a large amount of image text pairs. So the question that we tried to ask in this particular work was, can we use these models trained with a contrastive loss between the vision and text domains or caption domains to do zero-shot transfer to the semantic segmentation task? And is that even possible? And to put it more concretely as to how we defined our problem, so the problem definition was that typically when you train a semantic segmentation model, you have a bunch of ground truth masks, but we assume that we have absolutely no ground truth masks for training for any category. And we simply train our model completely mask-free with a bunch of images and their corresponding available captions. And then at inference time, we're able to inference any given image and generate its segmentation masks with the trained model. So in order to perform this task, we propose a specific architecture, which we call group VIT. And the group VIT, in the group VIT architecture, we were able to introduce specific modules by which semantic segmentation emerged simply with text supervision alone. So in order to train group VIT, basically the whole procedure of how this was trained is as follows: that we're given image text pairs that we've crawled from the web. In our case, we had around 30 million image text pairs. We trained group VIT jointly with a text encoder via contrastive loss. And we found that during the process of training with our special group VIT architecture, the semantic segmentation groupings, bottom-up groupings, emerge simply by learning with text supervision. And then at inference time, we had the ability to provide any image, inference image, through the group VIT architecture, which would produce segmentation labels as is shown on the top. And then by associating the visual content of each of these segments to the encoding of text labels, of class labels, using the text encoder, we could further classify them into semantic classes and assign labels to each semantic label, semantic group that emerged. So what did the group VIT architecture look like? So essentially, if you're familiar with the VIT architecture, the VIT architecture takes in a bunch of spatial tokens. And so the main thing in the group VIT was that we modified the VIT architecture to additionally contain a bunch of learnable group tokens, which were also learned in the process of training. And the spatial tokens, and we further had a grouping block by which all the spatial tokens would be assigned in a soft manner to the learned groups, to one of the learned groups. And we found that during the process of training these groups, these spatial groups would emerge. And we had multiple hierarchies of these grouping tokens by which, the smaller tokens were merged into larger tokens. And finally, at the top of the group VIT, the groups were assigned to particular categories via text supervision. In order to also train group VIT, we also proposed a special form of the contrastive loss whereby we not only contrasted with the caption, entire sentence of the caption, but also with all the nouns present in each caption. And during inference time, as I mentioned, the group VIT backbone first produced all the segments, and then the segments were associated with the text embeddings of an open vocabulary, a vocabulary which was the segmentation vocabulary to label the particular category of the segments. And what we found was that this group VIT using text supervision performed significantly better than various forms of other representations. For example, k-means clustering of the VIT features, etc. And so the groups that emerged were significantly better with group VIT versus other forms of grouping. And also that group VIT was competitive with a model DIET trained with full supervision using ImageNet when transferred to the semantic segmentation task. And also we found that the zero-shot performance of object recognition of group VIT was very similar to VIT. So none of the object recognition performance was compromised by changing this architecture. And here we quickly show some visual results on the Pascal VOC dataset, both in terms of the first level grouping and the second level grouping in the second and the third columns, and compare that to the ground truth. And similarly here, we again show more results and some more. And so to conclude, in this particular work, it was very interesting and encouraging to find that we could indeed hierarchically find semantically similar groupings of visual tokens and group them into irregularly shaped groups. And this was done simply by learning with text supervision. And also we found that this model was able to generalize to many different segmentation data sets without requiring any fine-tuning or any labels. However, there were, as you observed, that the groups themselves were not as high quality, like the segments themselves are not as high quality. And we also found that because text is fairly noisy, the classification of the various segments was not always the most accurate. So in the next work that I'm going to describe, which we call Odyssey, which is to perform open vocabulary panoptic segmentation with text-to-image diffusion models, we further continued this along this line, and we explored if we could use diffusion models to perform open vocabulary panoptic segmentation. And this was work that was published this year at CVPR 2023. And it was a highlight work, was among the top 10% accepted papers. So in this particular task, we wanted to be able to segment and categorize anything in the world. So in semantic segmentation, most of the times you only label the thing categories with semantic labels, but in panoptic segmentation, which is the task that we wanted to perform with Odyssey, we decided to label both the stuff category in the background as well as the thing categories in the foreground, and additionally to perform instant segmentation of the thing categories. So we were inspired by diffusion models. These are text-to-image synthesis models that have shown unprecedented quality and diversity as well as compositionality. And we were motivated by the fact that, since they're able to synthesize such good images, their internal representations must, first of all, they're guided by text. So, and also they're well, differentiated in a pixel manner. So what that meant to us was that their internal representations of diffusion models must be quite well semantically differentiated and have semantic labels, contain semantic labels for the different categories. So inspired by this idea, when we looked at the k-means clustering of the internal representations of diffusion models, and we found that they're indeed quite well differentiated and localized in their information content. And if you compare the same sort of thing, on the left are the k-mean clustering of the diffusion features, internal features, versus on the right are the k-means clusterings of the CLIP model's vision backbone. You find that the diffusion features are much more semantically correctly grouped versus the CLIP features. So this inspired us to explore whether we could use these text-to-image diffusion models for open vocabulary panoptic segmentation. And our model, as I mentioned, we call it Odyssey. So I want to make a differentiation here. In the previous task, we explored zero-shot segmentation, which is we have no segmentation labels at all, and can segmentation or grouping emerge, and can we perform segmentation on any category in a zero-shot manner? Whereas in this particular task, in the open vocabulary task, we assume that we have an available set of training data with a small vocabulary, in our case, the COCO data set, with its labeled categories. However, at inference time, the assumption was that we encounter categories that are not seen during training, which is what we define as the open vocabulary. So the training pipeline of Odyssey is as follows. Given training images, we first tried to pass them through a pre-trained frozen diffusion model and extract the internal features of the particular given image, training image. However, the diffusion model, in order to synthesize images, it needs both a noisy version of the input image and a text prompt. So we actually came up with a way to generate an explicit text prompt from a particular image to be able to successfully sort of create a caption for it. And we tried various different forms of caption, and we found this to work the best. So then, using the internal representations derived from diffusion models, we fed them into a mask generator. In our case, we used the mask to former model, and the mask generator generated mask proposals, in our case, 100 mask proposals, along with mask embeddings, which is the visual representation of the content of each estimated mask. And this mask generator was supervised with a binary mask class, which was class agnostic, meaning at this stage, we didn't care about what class it was. We treated all classes in the labeled data set as equal. And then the next phase was to try and assign a category label to the various mask proposals that are predicted. And for that, we used either text supervision or caption supervision, which is present in the COCO dataset for each image with a grounding loss, or we used actual category label supervision provided with each mask from the COCO dataset. And when we use the actual mask labels, we use the softmax loss to or cross-entropy loss to supervise it. And with the caption losses, we use the grounding loss. And then at inference time, when we were given an input image, we extract its implicit caption, and along with that, its diffusion features, and we add just one step of noise to the image to produce a noisy version to extract the diffusion model's unit features, internal features. We feed these internal features into the mask generator. We generate the mask embeddings as well as the mask proposals. And then we do an additional step where we also do pooling of mask features from an image encoder of a CLIP model to obtain an additional visual representation, or which we call mask embedding, from the image encoder. And then we take a dot product between the category names contained in the open vocabulary, which is encoded using a text encoder of the CLIP model. And we take the dot product between the two sets of visual embeddings, and finally take a geometric mean of the category labels from these two types of similarity matrix to get the final category label. Right. So how did we perform? So we found that Odyssey architecture to be quite powerful, and it significantly advanced the state of the art. So at the time, MassClip was the only other model that performed panoptic segmentation, open vocabulary panoptic segmentation, and compared to MassClip, Odyssey resulted in a significant improvement in performance. And a prior work, OpenSeg, which was published before MassClip, only used the clip model, did not use the diffusion model. And as compared to that as well, we found that Odyssey led to a significant improvement in open vocabulary, panoptic segmentation accuracy on the ADE 20K dataset. And just to mention here is that ADE 20K was not used at all for training. We simply trained the data, Odyssey on the COCO dataset. Here are some qualitative results on the AD 20K dataset. And it did perform quite well on a large number of categories from this previously unseen dataset. And here are some more visual results. And we also show some more results on the Ego 4D dataset, which is sort of from an ego perspective. And you can see that it categorizes both the stuff categories, for example, the tile wall, wood wall, door, etc., as well as the thing categories in the foreground, laptop, counter, etc. Here's another example of, again, from the Ego 4D dataset. Here are, just like to point out that the code for Odyssey is available online if you'd like to try it. We also have a demo, online demo on the Hugging Face space that you can try. And I'd like to thank all my collaborators, various collaborators from NVIDIA Research, as well as UC San Diego, who helped in this work, and the principal investigator, Jairus Shu, who was the main PhD student who performed both these, who did the research for both these works. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Feel free to raise up the hands and ask any questions. Okay. And we have one question from the audience for now.
Hello, thank you for this talk. So I just have one question. So when you are doing this segmentation, let's suppose if you are looking at small data, so what would be then as the expected accuracy should be argument if I am looking at microscopic images? Any idea, because those are much smaller, the API and those things?
Could one of the organizers please repeat the question? I had a hard time hearing the question.
Yeah, I can repeat it again. So you tested it on large object, for example, images, either person or some other thing. Let's suppose that we have very small object, for example, API or some other thing. What would you say that's very simply?
Actually, I can repeat the question. So the key question is, we have done most of the experiments on larger objects. Hi, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes. So the question from the audience is, since we have a lot of results on large objects, right? They have large areas in terms of objects. How do you think the experiment scale to smaller objects, which is microscopic areas, like the objects are very tiny?
Right. Yeah. So in order to think about this, sorry. Hello? Can you hear me?
Internet is not stable.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so in order to answer this question, I think the scale at which segmentation labels would be produced in the first work, I think it's not, we found that it was not very controllable. In some sense, the hierarchy that emerges is whatever is learned in a self-supervised manner, and there's really no control over that, and whatever emerges from the process of learning. And I think to some degree, my feeling is that the scale at which those segments emerge is somewhat dictated by how detailed perhaps the captions are, and to what extent things are described in the captions, and that my intuition is that that dictates the segments that emerge or are learned. However, in the second work, which is Odyssey, where we actually do use segmentation labels from the COCO dataset for training, I think in those sorts of works, the scale, or the fine-grained scale at which the segments would be produced is controlled indeed by the data set that you use for training. So we train a binary segmentation network, which is the master former. And if very fine-grained details are indeed labeled in your data set, I expect that it would learn to segment at that scale. However, if larger objects are labeled in that data set, then it would learn to segment at that larger scale. So I think that is what my intuition is with regards to what scales it would handle. I hope that answers the question. Did I lose the audience?
Yeah, hi Shalini, you can go ahead. We just experiencing a Wi-Fi issue.
Oh, okay. Hi, Zive. So, was my answer heard, or should I repeat the answer?
No, I think we need to repeat again. We didn't hear.
Okay.
But you got a
Okay.
question, Shalini?
Yeah, I got the question. The question was, if I'm correct, was like, What about segmenting at the microscopic level? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So my answer to this question is, in the first work that I described, where we tried to learn segmentation simply using caption data or caption labels, I think at that, my intuition is that for that particular problem where you're simply allowing segments to emerge from a bottom-up grouping, I think that there is really no control, explicit control that we have over the segment or the scale at which the segments would be produced or they would emerge. However, I think that perhaps it would likely be a function of the granularity of detail described in the text or the captions themselves. And what I expect is that if there is a granularity of descriptions present in the captions, then one can expect that would emerge in the segmentation as well. However, for the second work, which is the Odyssey work that I described, we do train that model with labels from the COCO dataset, segmentation labels from the COCO dataset. And in that particular task, I simply believe that the binary segmenter that we train, its granularity would be dictated by the annotated dataset that we're using for training. So if your annotated dataset has both microscopic annotations for microscopic features or segments, as well as for larger segments, I would expect it to learn that. In our case, we use the COCO datasets labels, which only contained object levels or stuff level labels. And so that's what it learned. But if you did have finer grained labels, I would expect it to learn that. Danny, you're muted on Zoom.
Yes. Yes, there's another raised hand there. Yes, over there, the gentleman.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. And I was going to review all this paper.